Next, we launch out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. Though our decision, that's step 3, was a vital and crucial step. It could have little or permanent effect. This is a promise. Unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of those things, look at these words, in ourselves. I thought it was in everybody else. See, it's those things in ourselves which has been blocking us. Our liquor, our drugs, our lust, our food, whatever it may be, whatever the addiction is, that's but a symptom. So we got to get down to causes and conditions. So if liquor and drugs and lust and food and all that stuff didn't cause my condition, what the hell did? And from here on, the book is going to start identifying this self in a way that is absolutely amazing. Let's skip the next paragraph. I'd love to read it, but for time's sake, let's skip it. Come down to the next one to where it said we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup. Look at that. Flaws in our makeup. I'll be damned. Huh. Over there it said God was a part of our makeup. Now it says there's flaws in our makeup. Does that tell me I'm suffering from 2 different systems of thought? I think so. And that's what caused my failure. See, I thought it was booze. I thought it was drug. I thought it was all this other stuff. Being convinced that self, if you would, please circle that word in your book, manifested in various ways is what had defeated, circle this word, please, us, we considered, circle this word, its common manifestation. Look at self, look at us, and look at its. They're not the same. I've always thought they were, but they're not. Now, resentment, and you will hear this, why I said earlier today, my spirit is not sick. It can't be. So why do I keep coming in here trying to heal the spirit? That can't be sick. That's God. God's not sick. Self is. Self has been my God. I didn't know that. But look at what it says. They say, well, the book says that we got a spiritual malady and that we're spiritually sick. And it's a spiritual disease. It says it right there. But if you read this with an awakened mind real close, look at what it says. Resentment. That's a common manifestation of self, according to that upper paragraph. Resentment is the number 1 offender. It, talking about resentment, which is a common manifestation of self, destroys more alcoholics than anything else, even alcohol. From it, resentment, which is a common manifestation of self, stem all forms of spiritual disease, not the spirit. Please circle those words, it, because that's referring back to resentment and self. All forms of spiritual disease. See, I thought that was because my spirit was sick. That ain't possible. That ain't possible. But not only have I been mentally and physically ill, I have been spiritually sick because of a human condition called resentment, which is a common manifestation of self. Now, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. Of course we did. That's not because I healed my spirit. That's because I got rid of resentments as a process of this work. Self was moved out of the way. The new director moved in. It began to flow into me, just like it talked about over there on 63. Hell yeah, the spiritual malady is overcome. I've straightened out mentally and physically now. So in dealing with resentment, see, it doesn't say, let's go ahead and deal with spirit here. It says, when dealing with resentment, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, and principles with whom we were angry, period. That means stop. Right there. We're going to stop, and we're going to make a list. So I drawed up all of these pretty columns in this notebook, just on and on and on. I come back. It's like, what the hell's that? Like, that's my charts for resentments. He said, where the hell do you read that? Well, shit, I don't. He said, why do you keep doing shit that's not in the book, going around telling everybody that you do stuff that's in the book? Like, good God, man. I mean, it's just like, I started seeing this self. He said, look at it, David. We made a list, not a chart, a list of people, institutions, and principles. Now, we're going to look at people and institutions prayerfully. because there was no amen at the end of step 3. So we're still very much deeply in prayer. But we're going to look differently at principles. We're going to look at those as self-defeating behaviors. What do I hate about David? Holy shit. You ain't got enough paper to write all that down. I hate everything. I hate me. I hate me for what I've done. I hate me for who I've become. I hate you for who you are and who I'm not. I start looking at all of this stuff. I'm bad. I'm sick. I'm no good. I'm damaged. I'm worthless. Fat. You're old now. Losing all your hair. Can't see no more. All of this shit. And I'm tracking it. I'm tracking it, man. That pen is right. And I'm writing all this shit down, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, my God, I've never seen this. He said, why do you think when you get to those upper steps, this shit comes back to meet you? Because you never dealt with it here. And in this process of the work, you're going to deal with it here. And he started reaching inside of me and pulling things out. And, man, I tell you what, it was killing me. It was killing me. And it kills me to even talk about it. But I tell you, it healed me. It healed me. That's the good news. It healed me. So we want to look at that stuff here. So finally, he has me to throw away all the charts, and I come back with just a list. He's like, now we're on track. The next sentence says, we ask ourselves why we were angry. If you'll go to your example on page 65 and look at the cause, and you'll count the words in the cause, there's only 19 of them there. I have everybody count them just in case I'm wrong, but I've never been wrong with this. And everything underneath them is different. This is where self likes to tell the story of what you've done to me, and this is why I'm mad at you. That's bullshit. We don't care about none of that. So there's 19 words there. Count them. He said in 19 words or less, every name that you got on that list, next to it, and I want you to go one name, one page. Flip the page. He said, I want the back of that page blank, because that's going to be what would be known as fourth column work. He said, I want you to do one name, one page, 19 words or less. 19 words or less. He's like, read the damn book. Do you see any more names and any more words than that there? And I was like, no. He's like, that's what I want you to do. So that's what I've done. So I come back and I said, I'm done. He said, all right. So we're going to look at the third part now. We found that it was our self-esteem, our pocketbook, ambitions, personal relations, including sex, which were hurt or threatened. If you'll circle that word hurt, circle that word threatened. We were sore, we were burned up. On our grudge list, we said opposite each name or circle this word injury. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations, which has been, and if you'll circle this word, interfered with. And if you'll look all the way to the right bottom part of that page, you're going to see the word pride. Now, these are the things inside of me that get affected prior to me getting a resentment and taking a drink or a drug or whatever else it is. Now, we're going to look at this third column very deeply in the way we go through this work. Now, if you print out your portfolio, you're going to see what's called the 7 areas of self. And it's going to give definitions to what these is. See, before I just ran through them, self-esteem, pride, self-esteem. Just gone. I missed the whole damn thing. I don't even have an experience there. That's just a bunch of words I wrote down. Let's look at the definitions of self-esteem. How do I feel about me? That's high or low. I either feel better than you or worse than you. Either way, I'm suffering from self-esteem. What about pride? This is how I thought others saw me or felt about me. Over time, man, I've had these prejudged ideas. They don't love you over there, David. You've done hurt too many of them now. Everybody else has heard about it and all AA. You just need to stay away from that. That's what pride would tell me. Ambition, what did I want? I want security. I want prestige. I want money. I want this. I want that. Security. Security is what I think I need from others to do for me so that I'll be okay. Personal relationships, that depends what demands I put on others. That's any relationship that doesn't include sex. Now, how was I hurt, threatened, injured, or interfered with? That's the sex relations of what's going on inside of me. And the last one is pocketbook. finances, money, property, security, and material. So that's what we're going to take a look at in that column. Now, as I write these things out, I'm going to ask myself one question, and this is where the core of it starts kicking my tail. I can't hardly even take it no more. It's like, man, I got to have this power. I got to keep drawing back on this third step prayer. I got to keep going back to it every time I write. If the phone rings and I sit down the pen and I answer it, or it's text, I come back, I do that prayer, I start to write. If I try to do this any way other than prayerfully, because there is no amen at the end of step 3, then I'm doing it with self. And all of a sudden I'm starting to see this. And so I'm asking myself this question: what do I do when my self-esteem is bashed? What do I do? What did I do? Well, I attack, I bully, I isolate, I depress, I eat a lot, I lust, I act out. That's what's wrong with you. I'm like, holy shit, wow. And he's like, you see, it's not any of that other stuff, it's self. What about my pride, how I thought others saw me or felt about me? I thought you looked down on me for what I'd done. But what do I do when I feel like people look down on me for what I've done? I isolate. I hide out in shame. I don't feel good about me anymore. I want to eat. I want to do this. I want to do that. Wow. What did I do, or what do I do anytime one of these are threatened? And as you start looking at that, as you're writing through this, I promise you this starts to awaken on the inside of you. And it's like, holy shit, now I know what's going to step 6 and 7. It ain't them words. Before it was all like, oh, God, remove self-esteem and remove pride. No bullshit. We're going to remove, please remove the behaviors connected around all that shit. Because that's what's killing me. That's why I can't grow into the man that God wanted me to be. And I start seeing this for the first time in my life, and I'm absolutely amazed. Wow. I begin to recover emotionally. For the first time in 25 years, I start to recover emotionally. A lot of stuff there. I always want to look at what, and you circled these words, what was hurt, threatened, injured, or interfered with. That don't have anything to do with you. That has everything with how I react to what you do. See, the way I reacted to what you did before was with violence and with self. But you could do the same thing to me today, and I'd probably go pray for you. I'd make you get away from me. I ain't going to condone bad behavior, and I don't expect you to do that for me. But see, what changed was my outlook on it now, because I know what's got threatened. I know what's got hurt, injured, or interfered with. Big difference there, big difference. So it says we're going to go back to our lives on accounts of thoroughness and honesty. When we're finished, we're going to consider it carefully. The first thing apparent is that this world and its people were often quite wrong. Well, that's not very damn hard. I don't need a book to read to tell me that. But look at what it says here. To conclude that others was wrong. That's column 2. That's the cause. Was as far as most of us ever got. If you look at that sentence closely, most of us is talking about the first 100 people that wrote this book. That's as far as most of them ever got. If you've ever gotten past the second column and the work that we do here in this, you've got further than most of them ever did. And if we don't do that, it doesn't say we're going to drink, but look what it says. The usual outcome is people continue to wrong us and we stay sore. My outlook doesn't change. I don't begin to recover emotionally. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we're sore at ourselves. Self has a way of turning it back to me. I quit being mad at you. I start being mad at me. And so the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got in war. The victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. Guys, I have a example here in the portfolio. If you guys print out that email, you'll have one too. But this kind of looks like what the inventory that we do. See, the man told me to do one name, one page. So on the back side of that page, it would have been blank. So if I had 100 names, I had 100 pages. I was like, Jesus, you're serious. And he's like, I'm damn serious. And he was. So what we do here, in 19 words or less, I'm going to write the cause. Now, underneath that, I'm going to look at the 7 areas itself because I got all of this paper left. Now, based on what I showed us back over here, Ashley, do you have yours pulled up so that they can see it there? I don't want to get ahead of you.
Yes, sir. We're good.
Okay, thank you. What we're going to do is look at self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal and sex relations in the pocketbook. Based on that information he gave me that I showed you just a minute ago, he asked me to write a little definition, not a story, of how self-esteem was affected because of this one resentment. Now, this was a resentment I had with a coworker. He didn't show me the attention and the respect of a loving friend, and he's negative, and I don't trust him. That's less than 19 words. Now, how does that affect my self-esteem? Myself tells me, who the hell does he think he is to treat me that way? The other side of me says, well, maybe I am unworthy. I start getting into fear. Now, the question becomes, what do I do, or what do I do every time that I feel like that? Well, that's where we really start pulling out the emotional crap that's going on the inside of us. I'm going to write about how it affected my pride, fear of his opinion of me. It'll set the course for how others in the company feel about me. Maybe they do really believe that. I start getting into fear. Well, what do I do when I get into that kind of fear? What did I do? What do I do? I tag. I bully. I become dishonest. I start taking shortcuts to try to act like I'm better. Now I'm starting to get to the core of what the hell's wrong with me. They don't have anything to do with them. It's how I perceive them, what they've done to me. And so, crazy. And we start waking up to that. And it's like, oh my gosh. So, top of 66, or middle of the page there, it says, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads to only futility and unhappiness. Now he's going to tell us about 7 times on this page, if we don't get free of anger and resentment, it's going to kill us. Now back on 64 there, when he had me to write the inventory, he had me to pay attention to the word anger. He said that word is different than resentment. It's closely in connection too, but they're not the same. I want you to write about everybody you've ever been angry. And I'm like, my God, do you have any idea how long that damn list would be? And he said, yeah, I do. Okay. And it was a lot. But over here, it's going to tell us on 66, if we don't find a way to get rid of this anger that lives inside of us and manifests outward toward others, and we think it's their fault that it's going on, if I don't get rid of that kind of perception, I'm never going to recover from alcoholism, and eventually I'm going to always go back to the old power, and that's alcohol, drugs, or whatever it may be. First time we see this is right here. This leads only to futility. We know that word's connected with death. To the precise extent that, look who permits these. We permit these. Not God, not Spirit. We. Do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. There it is again. That's connected very closely to death. We found it is fatal. There it is again. That word's connected to death. We found when harboring such feelings, talking about resentment, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. See, there's nothing wrong with our spirit. We're just shut off from the sunlight of it. I can walk out here right now and look up and see that sunlight, and it's beautiful. I can walk out here at 10 o'clock at night and look up there, and it ain't there. Now, it's not because it's not there. It's just because it's dark, and hell, I can't see it. And that's how it is in my spiritual life. I can't see it because I'm not in the sunlight. All I can see is what you've done to me. I can't see what's going on inside of me. I'm in the dark. So we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. We're not shut off from it. We have shut ourselves. Self has shut us off from the Spirit, making us think that the Spirit is sick. And when we harbor such feelings as resentment and anger toward others, we hold that in, shut ourselves off. The insanity of alcohol or whatever it may be returns, and we drink again. With us to drink is to die. That has nothing to do with my spirit. So there it is again, the word die. If we were to live, opposite of living is dying. That's about 5 or 6 times here. He says we have to be free of anger. Self tells me that's not possible. You'll never be free of anger. It's not saying that I won't ever get angry. It's saying that I must be free of it. I can't let that shit dominate me like it used to. The grouch and the brainstorm are not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal man, but for the alcoholic, these things are poison. Drink poison, you die. That's about 6 times right there. He's told us on this page in different words. Better find a way, David, to get rid of anger. It's going to kill you. So we're going to turn back to the list. Remember, I brought all these pretty charts, and he said, what the hell are them for? Get rid of them and come back with a list. Well, now we're going to turn back to that list. Because that list is going to hold the key to the future. How? How is that possible? Because I'm going to look at it from an entirely different angle now. I'm not seeing with the same eyes I was before. I've started to wake up now. We begin to see that the world and its people really dominated us in that state, talking about a state of mind. The wrongdoing of others, that's column 2. Remember that work in the cause? Fancied or real. See, sometimes I make that up. It actually had the power to kill. There it is again, 7 times on this page. We either get rid of that or we die. How can we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We can't wash them away anymore in alcohol. Here's our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. When I look at that word realized and I look at it spiritually, it means with my real eyes. And when I see you with my real eyes, I see love. I don't see hate. I'm going to realize with my real eyes that people who wronged me, column 2, were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms, that's column 2. And the way that these disturbed us, that's column 3. They, like us, were sick too. Here's my prayer. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience we cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is the sick man. Not from a place of judgment, from a place of compassion. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry, thy will be done. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant, key word right here, view. My view is going to change of each and every one. So Mike said, David, stop right there. He said, you're going to pray the list. What the hell you mean I'm going to pray the list? He said, we turn back to the list. We're going to turn back to the list. It says we're prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We're going to look at it from an entirely different angle. He said, here's the visualization I want you to get. I want you to think of somebody who's been in a hospital bed that's very close to you that was dying. And someone that you had so much compassion for. And he said, do you remember such a person that you prayed with all your heart? Yeah. And he said, I want you to visually take that man out of the bed. I want you to put each name on that list in that bed, and I want you to pray for that man the same way you did that person saying this prayer. God, help me show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience we'd cheerfully grant a sick friend. When they offended, we said to ourselves, this is the sick man. How can I save him? God, how can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. And I said, you got to be freaking kidding. He said, I'm not kidding. He said, who is it? Well, most of you have met little James, little redheaded dude. Remember, he come sweat with us, sweat all him around. Called him little because he was little for so long, and now that shit, he's up to there, you know. He ain't little anymore. But when he was little, he got real sick. His stomach began to swell and swell and swell and swell. Hell, he's that big around to begin with, even now. And he was about to pop. And we couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, man. And we had him everywhere. Took him to OU, medical. I mean, we had him everywhere. And I can just remember that day just dropping down and praying for him. Unlike I'd really ever prayed for anybody that I'd ever met. Mike says, that's your guy, huh? I said, yeah. Take him out of the bed. No, I don't want to do that, man. I don't want to do that. So you won't stay sick. No, I don't want to stay sick. You're going to make a choice. You're either going to do it or you're not. And if you're not, we need to hang up. Very reluctantly, I took that boy out of the bed visually. I put each person on that list in the bed. I prayed this prayer. He said, you will not move into what is called the fourth column until you found a way to forgive everybody. Good God. My mind said that'll never happen. But I promise you, the more I prayed this, and the more I sat with this, and the more I prayed this, and I had a lot of names, and it took for a long time to do it, I finally got to the end of it. And there was one that I was hanging on to. There's a story in the back of the book on page 552, and I don't have time to go to that now. But that's what he had me to do on that one until it was all gone. He said, now you're ready for calling forth. I had never done this prayer work in all the years that I'd ever written inventory. I'd read thousands of inventories. Never had I done this. No one ever told me to. The book's very specific about it. So it says, referring to our list again. See, it keeps coming back to that list. But now it's going to ask me to do something different here. I'm going to put out of my mind the wrongs that others had done. That's column 2. We're not going to look at any of that anymore. He said, David, we're going to look at your mistakes, not your part. We're going to look at your mistakes. And then you're going to ask yourself these questions. Where had I been selfish? He said, leave a little bit of room. That's why he wanted the back side of that page blank, because that's where all this work goes. Skip a few lines. Where had I been dishonest? Skip a few lines. Where have I been self-seeking? Skip a few lines. Where have I been frightened? It's very clear right there. So if the situation had not been entirely our fault, we try to disregard the other person involved entirely. There's one more question, and here it is. Where were we to blame? I never wrote about that in my life in inventory, ever. Now, these are called the turnarounds. And people say, well, where do you hear that from? Where do you see that from? Well, if you look at the last paragraph, or the second to the last on page 66, it says, we turn back to the list. It held the key to the future. We're prepared to look at it from a different angle. That tells me my thinking is going to need to turn around. So this is called the turnarounds. If you look at my example, and Ashley, if you have yours, if you'll pull it up for him on the turnarounds, this is what he had me to do. He writes, where had I been selfish? He had me skip a few lines. Where have I been dishonest? Skip a few. Self-seeking, frightened, to blame. I began to write this prayerfully. He said, do not get away from prayer, David. If you do this without prayer, because there was no amen at the end of step 3, we're still very deep in prayer, then you're just wasting time, ink, and paper. Okay? So I came at this prayerfully. Where had I been selfish? Well, mentally, it was what did I want? Was I more concerned about me without regard for others? Was I more concerned about my thoughts, opinions, my priorities, and my time? Hell yeah, I was. Well, that's where you've been selfish. Dishonest. Did I tell a lie of omission or commission, or did I lie to myself? What was the truth that I wasn't seeing there? What's the real truth? Did I put myself in that position to be harmed? Yeah. How did I do that? Well, I wasn't practicing 10 and 11 as I know to practice it today, because nobody had ever showed me that. And as a result of not doing that, I opened myself up to all kinds of spiritual sickness. Do I have unreasonable expectations for myself and others? Was I a hypocrite? Did I do the same thing that I'm getting on to other people about? Did I get into somebody else's business when I should have stayed out of it? Did I feel inferior or superior? Did I judge someone? Did I want someone to suffer and receive punishment? A man once told me, he said, it's either justice or punishment, David. Which is it? You either want mercy for everyone or you want justice for everyone. And since you're a part of everyone, you pick. But remember this. If you pick punishment for them, since you're a part of them, you're all one, right? We're all one. Then you're going to get punishment too. Hell no, I don't want punishment for them. I want mercy. All of a sudden, my perception begins to change there. You know what I'm saying? So I want to look at all this stuff. Look at that word self-seeking. Turn that around. Seeking self. I don't have time to go through all of those examples, but I'm happy to show it to you. I wrote all of this down prayerfully. My God, you talk about the things that got pulled out of the inside of me that I never even knew was there. He said, where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and we were willing to set these matters straight. That's the 8th and 9th step work. So at this point, we're done with resentment inventory. We're going to move into the fear. There's 3 sections of inventory and inventory. Part 1, 2, and 3, A, B, and C, however you want to call it. Resentment's the number 1 offender. That's why there's so many of them. Now we're going to look at fear. Notice the word fear. It's bracketed alongside the difficulties with Browns, Jones, and the employer and the wife. If you hold your place and flip back 1 page, and you look at your effects in that example on 65, see how fear is listed alongside self-esteem all the way down through there? That's what he's talking about. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our life. It was an evil and a corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through it. What the hell does that even mean? Well, the fabric of my existence is found in that 3rd column. Look at your example on 65. Sex relations, self-esteem, security, fear, personal relationship, pride. See, that's the fabric of my existence. And I'm shot through with it, and fear is driving every bit of that to the surface. And I think it's you. I hate you for that. And when I hate you, I disconnect from the spirit. When I keep you at a distance, I keep the spirit at a distance. And when I let you in, I let the spirit in, and we can heal together. But if I hate you, I'm sick. I'm sick. And my head says you'll never get well from all that. Bullshit. Yeah, we do. It's an evil and corroding thread. The fact of our existence was shot through with it. Set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune. We felt we didn't deserve, but did we not ourselves set that ball rolling? The thing I fear usually comes to see me in reality. My grand sponsor tells a cool story of that. He met a lady in AA and they began to date. He was a very jealous man. I mean, he was so suspicious of her all the time because she's a pretty woman. Everybody checked her out, laughed, you know. He'd get up, go to the bathroom. He'd get in there and look on her phone. Got on to what he was doing. She's like, dude, just cut that out. Ain't no need in all that. We're good. We're good. No. He's afraid. He's afraid. You know, he'd drive by her house at night, see if anybody was there. And finally, she had enough. She said, that's it. No more. And he said, see, I told you. Told you. You weren't good enough for her to start with. And that's what it does. It sets in trains of circumstances which brought the misfortune we felt we didn't deserve, but did we not ourselves set that ball rolling? He absolutely set that ball rolling. So we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. What does it steal? It steals my joy. It steals my peace. It steals, my contentment. It takes away. And remember back on 62, it said, all of this is driven by fear. That's what self is driven by, fear. So we reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Was it because self-reliance failed us? Turn that word self-reliance around and look at it as reliance upon self. And that's what's brought on the fear. See, I don't know that, but that's what's brought on the fear, and it's failed me. Self-reliance is good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us have once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. So on our example, Miss Ashley, if you would, let's flip over to the 12 basic fears. Now, here's what I do. I tell my guys, go ahead and write me a list of every fear you ever had and do it prayerfully, because remember, there was no amen at the end of step 3, so we're still very much deep in prayer. So they'll come back with all these prayers. Now, there'll be like 50, 60, 70, 80 of them. I'm like, all right, we're going to narrow them down to 12. And they're like, 12? Because you see, all of that shit is surface fears. The basic and the root fear is underneath all of that. So the 12 basic fears, if you have that, Ashley, if you'll show it to everybody over there, the 12 are rejection, abandonment, failure, success, being lied to, being hurt emotionally or physically, being intimidated, being exposed, being humiliated, responsibility, the unknown, and death. And people say, well, where the hell do you get all that from? Well, if you'll read and pick it out of this book, it isn't written in that order, but it's all in here. So we start looking at Dude says, all right, I'm afraid to fly in an airplane. Well, which one of those does that connect to? Death. Well, I don't know what's going to happen to me in the future. That's connected to the unknown. You see, the surface fear is not the root. And I can get rid of the surface, but all this other shit keeps showing up because I never got to the root. And so I have my guys to write about rejection prayerfully, abandonment, each one of these prayerfully. You don't have to write a bunch, just prayerfully. Whatever comes to you, let the pen do the writing, same as Bill did with the book. Let the Spirit write it, because now we're on a different basis. It says, perhaps there's a better way, middle of the page, 68. We think so, for now we're on a different basis, the basis of trust and relying upon God, not self. We trust infinite God rather than finite self. We're in the role, in the world to play the role He assigns. See, I was always the one that assigned the roles. My son, my mother, my wife, my this, my that, my. That guy wants to tell me, he said, man, you're looking at that differently. You're not your wife, you're her husband. That's not your son. You're their dad. Start acting that way. Damn. He said, quit assigning all these roles to everybody. Wow. So just to the extent that we do what we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity? We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is a way of weakness. The way of spirituality for me is the 12 steps and beyond. The verdict of the ages says that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Today I can talk about Christ, and I don't care if you like that or you don't. There's a day you wouldn't have heard me that come out of my mouth at all. But as I went through the spiritual terms, now I can talk about that. But I can also talk about Buddha, and I can also talk about the Hindus, and I can talk about other things that brings great joy and practice in my life, because I look at all of it. I don't apologize for God. Instead, I let Him demonstrate through me what He can do. I never done that before. Self was demonstrating what was going on through me, and that was an ugly picture. I promise you, that picture was ugly. Here's our prayer. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be, not what He would have us do. See, I keep thinking I need to do something, get rid of these fears. No, it's what He would have us be. Look at the great promise. At once, we commenced to outgrow fear. And what He would have me be, this refers to my character. I'm not the same man I was then. I'm a different guy because of this work. Once we write all that out, they come back with it. I came back with it to Him. He's like, all right, now we're moving on to conduct. And this was the part I was dreading. Now about sex. Bottom page 68. Many of us needed an overhaul in there, more than a mirror tune-up, right? But above all, we try to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off the track. I promise you it is. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, even in the fellowship. Absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices, and we're going to look at this as a set of voices that lives within the head. Private sex is the lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. You've seen them for as long as man's been around. There's a group of people that believes that it's only for one reason, and that's to have babies and raise babies. Other than that, there's no use in it. But then it says we have voices who cry for sex and more sex, and if we ain't very careful, that's exactly what begins to happen, even sober. Who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we don't have enough of it, or it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow a man no flavor for his fare, and they all would have us on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We don't want to be the arbiter, and that word just means a person with the power to decide or dispute, like a judge. That's all that means. We don't want to be the judge of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about it? So I make a list. All these names. And I come back to Mike. He's like, what the hell is that for? I perfectly made a list of names. Where in the hell do you see them instructions at? I'm like, God, man. He's like, dude, I told you to wait. Wow. I've done this all my life this way, man. He's like, has it got you anywhere? No. He said, man, we don't care who all you've done it with. It's not asking for that. It's asking about your conduct. Look at what it says. What can we do about them? That ain't talking about the people. That's talking about the problems. We reviewed our own conduct, not a list of names over the years past. Where the hell does our fellowship get so lost with this stuff? It says, where have we been selfish? He said, David, I want you to write about your selfishness prayerfully. I want you to write about where have you been dishonest. So this is what it kind of looked like. If you got yours over there, Miss Ashley, let's go to the conduct portion of it. He had me to do it in this way. Where I've been selfish. He told me to skip 2 or 3 lines, and he said, don't write no name. He said, from as big as you can remember until as old as you are now, what has your conduct looked like in this area when it comes to selfishness? I'm like, Jesus, I don't know. Prayerfully, David, prayerfully. Jeez. Dishonesty, inconsideration. Whom had I hurt? See, we would think a list of names would go there, but no, we're talking about people, kids, wives, husbands, whoever. We're not talking about names. Now, we're going to get to a place in another step about names, but this isn't it. Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, bitterness? Write about all that. Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? On my example, I have this. Where had I been selfish? Not knowing that itself, the narrative convinced me that I wanted to spend more time acting out and drinking and drugging and spending time with family and kids. Self convinced me that people were objects and that people owed me. I wanted something for nothing, and I'd brag about acting out when I became very depressed and continued to act out with more people to try to gratify self. And self convinced me that it was notches on the belt and that I wasn't hurting anyone. And I made many empty promises to get my way, and I always wanted something for nothing. And that's how I've been selfish. And holy shit, I'm draining here. I mean, I'm praying and I'm writing this, and it's just like, I can't do this, man. I can't do this. And it's like, you know what the alternative is? And I get to where I might have been dishonest. When caught with many lies, many lies were told, and self-convinced me it was their fault. Had they taken care of me the right way, this would have never happened. I befriended husbands and boyfriends to gain their trust and assure them that nothing was going on between me and their significant others. All the while, I was premeditating to pounce with either their wife or their girlfriend or their friends, and I believed the truth about the lie, and it would be okay, and I would not get caught. And this shit is just flowing out of me, and man, I'm dying. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. And I'm saying now, if I don't change, I'm going to die in these rooms. I'm going to die. And I see it for the first time. I mean, I've already got a good glimpse of it, but now I see it's self. It's gratification for self. Fear is reliance upon self. All of this is self. It's like, this is not who you are, David. This is who you become based on a narrative that lives inside of your head and tells you that it's okay for you to do certain things, and you do it. You don't have to do that no more. I promise you, if you go through this and get past the 5th step, you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. And by God, he was right. Thank God. Because this was ugly, ugly, ugly to look at. Well, it says in this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound idea for our future sex life. He said, there's a period there. That means stop. Prayerfully, he said, I want you to come at this, and I want you to write a sane and sound idea for your future sex life. Don't just say a prayer and go write it. Pray, sit with it, and write it. And this is what came out of me with that prayer. I will honor God and all women. I will not lie, cheat, or take advantage of others. I will trust instincts and intuition, and I will not use lies and deceit to manage and try to control others or myself. I will develop my life for the greater good, and I will place character above money and concern for others and above personal gratification. I will not boast, but I will practice humility. I will honor God and respect women first and foremost always. I will turn away from sexism and all its guises, and I'll be a loyal friend and a partner. I will help others with the mistakes that I have made, and I will live with courtesy and honor and giving all honor to God. And I promise you, that don't come out of a guy like me without the Spirit doing the writing. Miss Ashley wrote one, and she put it in my portfolio, and this was hers. And I want to read that. You okay with that, Ashley?
More than okay. Thank you.
Okay. He says, I will respect my holiness, balancing self-care and spiritual growth as my number one priority. I will obey God by pausing and dismissing fear, choosing love and the present truth. I will honor God by only using my sex powers for oneness within a holy covenant of marriage and to an available secret. I will worship God through a life of selfless service to others, thinking and working for them. I tell you, that don't come from people like us. That only comes from Spirit. Powerful, powerful thing. Notice what it says here. Whatever our idea turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm. And I knew I had a lot of amends coming, but I wasn't at that step yet. So by this time, self's telling me, oh, you've got all these amends. I'm like, I don't care. I ain't there. I ain't there. In other words, we should treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God, now I've never done this, what I should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if I want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with others is often desirable. This is talking about people that are victims of abuse. But we're going to let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking and advice, even inside the fellowship. I avoid receiving it, and I avoid giving it. Suppose I fall short of this chosen idea here. That one's hers, but mine. Suppose I should fall short of it. Does that mean that I'm going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but that's only half the truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we're sorry for what we've done, we have the honest desire to let God take us to better things. We'll believe that we will have been forgiven and we have learned our lesson. If we're not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, key word right there, then I'm quite sure to drink. You see, I've never fallen back into that conduct physically ever again. Mentally, my mind is strayed away in its thoughts a time or two, but thank God for step 10 because I've been able to catch them and bring them back. I don't think the same way anymore. If I do, it ain't very long. So, hell yeah, do I fall short of that chosen idea from time to time in my head? Of course I do. But that's only half truth. I don't get drunk over that today. I don't act out over that today. I admit my wrong to my sponsor in the 10th step and my nightly review, and I move on about my day, and I don't worry about it no more. I don't really give a damn. It's like, I know that God is directing my thinking more than self is today. So, to sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right idea, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and strength to do the right thing. Anybody ever that may not do that? God, I read this for 25 years. Oh, that sounds great, yeah. When I started doing it, all kinds of great things began to happen. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of self. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache, either mine or yours. So if I've been thorough about my personal inventory, I've written down a lot. And I'll guarantee you by now, I had 3 notebooks full because I had a lot of resentments. We've listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend their futility and fatality. We've commenced to see their terrible destructiveness, and we've begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, where we look on them as sick people. We've listed the people we have hurt by our conduct, and we're willing to straighten out the past if we can. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you're now convinced that God can remove from you whatever self-will, little s, has blocked you off from Him. If you have already made a decision, step 3, and an inventory of your gross or handicap, step 4, then you make a good beginning. It keeps coming back. I'm like, damn, all this work I've done, I've just now made a good beginning. And that being so, you swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about self. And I promise you I had. His question, are you willing to go on? I'm like, well, hell yeah. I've done all this work. You can bet I'm willing to go on. Who would have ever thought I could have wrote my way out of this? Wow. And I told people, you know, all of these lies and all of this stuff that I would do, I look back on that today, and I'm able to forgive David because I knew it wasn't him. It was a system of thought much lower that I suffered from, and I didn't even know. You see, now I'm not only sober this time, I begin to recover emotionally this time. And now I know what it is that it's feeding me. And I know that moving forward, I'm going to heal in a big way. What I didn't know was what was fixing to come at me in this next chapter or so absolutely, completely blew me away. I had an experience beyond anything I'd ever experienced in all. I had an experience with T-Bone in 1995 that absolutely changed my life. It did at about a year sober after that boy died. And that was a wonderful time, but I didn't know anything about anything. And my sponsor said it like this. He said, David, when you took the third step, and this is what his sponsor had said to him, he said, way back then in the 90s, did you mean that with all your heart? I said, I did. And he said, then everything that happened to you from there to now is a part of that step. See, my grand sponsor tells the story that his sponsor took a cane, and they were all old Native Americans, and he drew a line from about here to where my buddy is back there in the back. And he told my grand sponsor, he said, walk that straight line. And he started walking, and that guy would come from this side and push him off. He'd get back on, and he'd start walking, and he'd push him off. And this guy's getting aggravated. He's tired of this shit, you know. The time he gets to that end of that line, he tells him, turn around and look back at that line. He says, you seem to think that the path to this is that straight line. But you see where you got off and you came off and you got off and you came back and got off and came back? That's the path, dude. You think you're going to walk the straight line in here and be perfect? Good luck. Let me know how that works out for you. But if you fall off that path and you come back and you fall off and you come back and you fall off and you come back, then you found the true path. And I was like, wow. You mind calling and tell my wife about any of this? You know? So anyway, I'm just saying, man, what a powerful, powerful process this is. And I just, you know, and I've done this many, many times. I mean, that's always my line. I've already done that. I already heard all that shit before. Yeah, well, he told me maybe if you'd have listened a little damn closer, you wouldn't got as sick as you did. You know what? He's right.